The bus doors hissed open like a warning. The driver didn't even turn his head at first, just lifted his chin toward the fare box, as if the plastic slot had more authority than he did. The old lady at the curb stepped up slowly, one hand wrapped around the railing, the other pressed tight to her chest where a purse should have been. Her coat was too thin for the sharp evening air, and her hair, white and pinned neatly, kept slipping loose, tugged by the wind. I can't find my wallet, she said, voice careful, polite, like she was used to speaking in rooms where people listened. If you could just let me ride to the next station, I can call. No fare, no ride, the driver snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. His badge read Tom, but his tone said something uglier, something that didn't need a name. Step back. I'm not a charity. The old lady's face flushed. She looked past him into the bus like she expected someone to correct him, like decency was a rule that could be enforced. Nobody moved. A few riders stared at their phones with their thumbs frozen. One man in a suit kept his eyes down, jaw clenched, pretending he hadn't heard. At the very back, pressed into the corner seat where the heater barely reached, an orphan girl watched it happen. She had a name, Mara Quinn, but most places didn't bother to learn it. They learned her file number, her bed assignment, her caseworker's extension. They learned that she belonged to Maple House, the group home on the edge of town, where the paint peeled and the lights flickered. She was 14, small for her age, with dark hair pulled into a tight knot and a jacket that used to be someone else's. In her pocket were 5 crumpled $1 bills, soft from being folded and unfolded so many times they had almost lost their corners. That money wasn't extra. It wasn't spare. It was the difference between getting home and walking in the cold. It was the bus fare she had counted twice before leaving the diner where she washed dishes after school. It was also the money she'd been saving for a new notebook, because the one she used for class was almost full, and she liked having clean pages when her thoughts got too loud. The driver reached for the lever to close the door. The orphan girl stood up before she could think, like her body had decided for her. She moved down the aisle, each step heavier than it should have been, and slid her hand against the doorframe. "Wait," she said. Tom's eyes narrowed. "Kid, sit down." "She's freezing," Mara said, her voice shaking in a way she hated. "She just needs one stop." The driver's laugh was flat. "You paying?" Mara's fingers tightened around the bills in her pocket. For a second, she saw Maple House in her mind, the narrow hallway that smelled like bleach, the front desk clock that ruled everyone's life, the rule written in bold marker on a sign, curfew 8:30, no exceptions. She saw Ms. Keene, the overnight supervisor, tapping her clipboard and asking, "And why should I believe you?" She saw her caseworker's tired eyes when she said, "Mara, I need you to stop making your life harder." But she also saw the old lady's hands trembling on the railing. She saw the way people looked away. She saw what it did to someone to be told you didn't matter. Mara stepped forward and dropped the $5 into the fare box. The coins and bills clattered, too loud in the quiet bus. "That covers her," she said. "And me." Tom grunted, annoyed by the fact that cash ended the argument. "Move, both of you." The old lady blinked, lips parted. She looked at Mara like she'd been handed a lifeline. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, and there was something in her expression, shock, gratitude, and something else, like she couldn't understand why a child who looked like she carried the whole world in her pockets would give it away. Mara helped her up the steps and guided her toward a seat. The bus lurched forward before they were fully settled. Mara grabbed the pole, steadying them both, and the old lady's hand brushed Mara's sleeve. It was soft, cool, uncalloused. The kind of hand that didn't scrub pans or lug laundry. "You didn't have to," the old lady said, voice low. "That was your money." "It's just money," Mara lied, because it sounded braver than the truth. The truth was that her stomach had already started calculating. If she had to walk from her stop to Maple House, would she make curfew? If she didn't, what would they do? The old lady stared ahead, blinking fast. "I'm Evelyn," she said finally. Evelyn Harrow. The orphan girl nodded like that meant nothing, like it was just another name in a city full of them. Then the man in the suit 2 rows ahead lifted his head, his eyes widening. His phone slipped in his hand. "Wait," he breathed, louder than he meant to. "Harrow?" Mara felt the bus air change, like the temperature had dropped even more, and every head started to turn as if a single invisible wire had pulled them all at once. And that was when the orphan girl realized she might have just paid bus fare for someone the whole city would recognize. Mara kept her gaze on her hands, because looking at people when they stared at you felt like stepping into a spotlight you didn't ask for. The man in the suit leaned into the aisle, craning his neck, trying to see the old lady's face without being obvious about it. "Ma'am," he said, uncertain, Are you Evelyn Harrow?" The old lady's shoulders stiffened. "I'm just trying to get home," she replied, not answering the question. Her voice went sharp around the edges, the way it does when someone is used to control and suddenly doesn't have it. A teenager near the back whispered, "Harrow like the Harrow Tower?" Another voice muttered, "Harrow like Harrow Group?" Phones rose, not fully but halfway, hovering like curious birds. Mara swallowed hard. She hated phones. She hated being recorded. Maple House had strict rules about social media, about faces and names and location tags. "Protect the kids, Ms." Quinn always said, even if she sounded more like she meant protect the organization. Mara's file already had too many notes, too many small mistakes stacked like bricks in a wall. She didn't need another. The old lady's breathing wasn't steady. Mara noticed because she noticed everything. Her eyes kept flicking toward the windows like she was searching for a landmark that made sense. "I had my bag," Evelyn whispered, more to herself than to Mara. "I set it down for just a second." "Just a second? Where were you?" Mara asked quietly. Evelyn rubbed her temple as if the memory hurt. "The garden," she said. "The city garden. I walked to clear my head. My driver. My security. I told them I wanted 10 minutes alone. They hate that." A thin smile tried to appear and failed. "I must have wandered farther than I thought." Mara pictured the city garden. Stone paths, iron benches, people taking pictures near fountains. It was on the wealthy side of town. It wasn't far from this bus route, but it was far from Maple House in every way that mattered. "Do you have anyone you can call?" Mara asked. Evelyn's mouth tightened. "My phone was in the bag." Mara's chest tightened too. That meant no easy solution, no quick fix, no call someone and wait. The bus rocked over potholes, and every jolt made Evelyn flinch, as if the roughness of the ride was a language she didn't speak. Mara leaned closer and lowered her voice. "People are looking at you," she said. "If you don't want that, you should maybe move your hair forward like this." She mimed pulling loose strands across her face. Evelyn blinked at her, then actually did it, awkward but willing. The orphan girl felt a strange flicker in her chest, something like power, but not the kind rich people had, the kind that came from knowing how to disappear. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered, and then, like she couldn't stop herself, she added, "Why did you do it?" Mara shrugged, staring at the scuffed floor. "Because it was wrong." "That's not why," Evelyn said softly. "Not the whole why." Mara's throat tightened. The whole why was a mess. The whole why was her mother's voice, remembered more than heard, telling her, "Don't walk past people like they're shadows." The whole why was nights in foster homes, where she'd begged for one kind adult, and learned what it felt like when none showed up. She didn't answer. She just watched the streetlights blur past and listened to the bus's tired engine. Halfway to Mara's stop, the door at the front hissed open again, and a man stumbled on, breathing hard. He looked around quickly, eyes darting. His jacket was too big, his hands were restless. He didn't sit. He stayed standing, swaying with the bus, inching closer down the aisle. Mara felt her skin prickle. She'd learned to read danger the way other kids learn to read books. The man's gaze landed on Evelyn's coat, on her jewelry. Subtle, not flashy, but expensive in a way Mara couldn't name. Then his eyes dipped to Evelyn's lap, to the spot where a purse should have been. He moved another step. Evelyn didn't notice. She was staring out the window, lips moving like she was counting blocks. The man leaned down and his hand slipped toward Evelyn's pocket, quick as a shadow. Mara grabbed his wrist. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't strong. Her fingers were small, but they clamped down with desperation, and the man jerked back like she'd burned him. "What are you doing?" Mara hissed. The man's eyes flashed cold. "Let go," he snapped under his breath. Other passengers looked up. Tom glanced in the mirror, annoyed. "Hey!" he barked. "No fighting on my bus?" "I wasn't," the man started, but Mara didn't let go. She could feel his pulse jumping under her fingers. Evelyn finally turned, confusion on her face. What's happening? Mara's heart slammed in her ribs. If Tom stopped the bus, if police got called, if Maple House got dragged into it, Mara would be the one blamed. She was always the one blamed. But if she let go, she knew exactly what would happen next. The man yanked hard, and Mara lost her grip. He slid back toward the doors, eyes furious, and for a second Mara saw something tucked under his sleeve, something bright red, a scarf, a strip of fabric. The doors hissed at the next stop, and the man slipped out into the night before anyone could grab him, leaving only the echo of his stare. Tom swore under his breath. "Next person causes trouble, I'm calling it in," he growled, and the bus rolled on. Mara's hands were shaking. Evelyn's eyes were wide now, truly scared for the first time. "That man," Evelyn whispered. "Was he—" "He was trying," Mara said, swallowing. "You don't have a purse, but you still look like money." Evelyn stared at her like she didn't know what to do with that sentence, like she didn't know what it meant to look like a target. Mara glanced at the clock above the driver. She was going to miss her transfer. She was going to be late. She was going to be in trouble. And now she had an old lady beside her, who might be a billionaire, who might be lost, who might not be safe at the station where Mara usually got off. Mara pulled the cord for the next stop anyway, and the bell rang like a choice being locked in. The stop was darker than it should have been. One streetlight flickered, buzzing like an insect trapped in glass. The sidewalk was cracked, and the wind carried the smell of damp concrete and old exhaust. Mara stepped down first, then turned back and offered her hand. Evelyn hesitated, then took it. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone who looked so fragile. "This isn't the station," Evelyn said, looking around. "It's my stop," Mara replied, "but you can't go to the station alone, not tonight." Evelyn drew her coat tighter, eyes narrowing as she took in the empty street. "I've been to the station," she said too quickly. "I'm not helpless." Mara didn't argue. She just lifted her chin toward the alley where the shadows pooled. "Okay," she said, calm. "Then go." Evelyn followed her gaze. A pair of teenagers lingered near a boarded-up storefront, shoulders hunched, watching. A man pushed a shopping cart too slowly, eyes scanning. The air felt thin, like something could snap. Evelyn's mouth tightened. "Fine," she said. "What do you suggest?" Mara hated that question. It felt like responsibility being shoved into her hands, the same way adults always did, when they didn't want to deal with something messy. But she couldn't leave Evelyn. Not after paying her way, not after seeing that red scarf slip away, not after hearing her say she'd wandered off alone like nobody had ever taught her fear. "I live nearby," Mara said. It's not my home. It's a group home. They have a phone. They have rules. But if I get you inside, you can call your people." Evelyn's face shifted at the words group home. Something softened, then hardened again, like an old memory had surfaced, and she didn't want to look at it. "You live there," she said. Mara nodded. "Yeah." Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it, like she was choosing her words carefully. "If we go there," she said, "will you get in trouble?" Mara's laugh was short and bitter. "I'm already in trouble," she said, because that was how it felt most days. "I'm past curfew if I don't get back soon." "And you spent your fare," Evelyn said, eyes on Mara's pocket like she could see the missing money. Mara didn't answer. Her stomach was a knot of math she couldn't solve. They walked. Evelyn moved slower than Mara wanted, and Mara kept glancing over her shoulder, watching for the red scarf, watching for anyone following. Every sound felt louder. A car door slamming in the distance made Evelyn flinch. Mara guided her closer to the lit side of the street, even though the light was weak. Maple House sat behind a chain-link fence with a bent gate. The building looked tired. The porch light worked only half the time. Tonight it buzzed dimly, casting a sickly circle of yellow. Mara's chest tightened. If Ms. Keene saw Evelyn, she would lose her mind. Mara climbed the steps and knocked anyway. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Footsteps. A lock. The door swung open just enough for a face to appear. Ms. Keene, hair in a messy bun, eyes already narrowed, clipboard in hand like it was welded to her palm. "Mara Quinn," Ms. Keene said, slow and dangerous. "Do you know what time it is?" Mara's throat went dry. Ms. Keene's eyes flicked past her, and landed on Evelyn standing in the shadows behind her. Evelyn straightened automatically, chin lifting, like she was putting on armor. "Ms." Quinn opened the door wider, and the porch light hit Evelyn's face. For 1 second, Ms. Quenn's expression didn't change. Then her eyes widened, not with kindness, but with recognition. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh no." Mara's stomach dropped. "What?" Ms. Quenn's voice came out as a whisper, sharp with panic. "Do you have any idea who that is?" she demanded, staring at Evelyn like she'd just seen a ghost walk up the porch steps. And before Mara could answer, headlights washed across the fence, bright and sudden like a searchlight finding them. The lights didn't belong to a bus. They were too clean, too steady. 2 black SUVs rolled to a stop in front of the gate, engines purring like restrained animals. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Evelyn blinked against the brightness. Mara's first instinct was to step in front of her, like her skinny body could block whatever was coming. "Miss..." Quenn's hand tightened on the doorframe, knuckles whitening. A man in a dark suit got out of the first SUV. He moved fast, scanning the street, one hand already at his ear like he was listening to someone no one else could hear. Behind him, another man stepped out, broader, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. "Mrs. Harrow," the first man called, voice tight with relief and anger tangled together. "Ma'am." Evelyn exhaled as if she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Finally," she murmured, but her voice trembled, and Mara heard the fear underneath the authority. The suited man reached the gate, pushed it open, and stopped short when he saw Mara and Ms. Quinn. His gaze flicked over Mara's worn sneakers, her jacket, her face. Something like suspicion flashed there, quick and practiced. "Who are you?" he demanded. Mara's mouth opened. No sound came out. Evelyn stepped forward. "Enough," she said, and that one word landed heavy like she'd dropped a stone into water. "This child helped me." The man hesitated, but he didn't relax. "We've been looking for you for 2 hours, he said to Evelyn, voice strained. "The board meeting was delayed. Your assistant..." "I don't care about the board," Evelyn cut in. "I care about the fact that I was stranded and treated like I was nothing. I care that a child paid my fare." The second man, the broader one, stared at Mara as if trying to memorize her. "Were you followed?" he asked Evelyn. Evelyn's eyes shifted. "There was a man on the bus," she said slowly. "He reached for my pocket." Mara's heart hammered. "Red scarf," she blurted, and everyone looked at her. "He had a red scarf. He got off before anyone could stop him." The broader man's eyes narrowed. "Did you see his face?" Mara tried to pull the image back up in her head. Sharp cheekbones, restless eyes, the way he moved like he was always halfway ready to run. "Not enough," she admitted, "but I can describe him." Ms. Quinn cleared her throat, and Mara remembered the most urgent problem. Maple House rules, Maple House reputation, Maple House fear of trouble. "You can't be here," Ms. Quinn snapped at Mara, like she could shove the SUVs away with that sentence. "This is a residential facility. We have protocols. We can't just..." Evelyn turned her gaze to Ms. Quinn, and Mara felt the air shift again. Evelyn's eyes were tired, but they were sharp. "And yet you keep children here," Evelyn said, quiet. "Children who walk home alone in the dark because they can't afford bus fare. Children who are terrified of missing curfew more than they're terrified of being hurt." Ms. Quinn's face flushed. "We do what we can," she said stiffly. "We have limited funding." Evelyn's mouth tightened as if she'd bitten into something sour. "Funding," she repeated. "Right." The suited man leaned closer to Evelyn, lowering his voice, but Mara heard it anyway. "Ma'am, the police have been notified," he said. "They're on their way. Standard procedure, missing person, high profile." Mara's stomach dropped. Police, questions, reports. Mara's file swelling with more ink. "I don't want police inside, Ms." Quinn said immediately, voice sharp with fear that wasn't about safety. "Absolutely not. It causes panic. It triggers the kids." "It will cause more panic if we don't clear this properly," the suited man snapped back. Mara's mind raced. If police came, they would ask how Evelyn ended up here. They would ask why Mara took her. They would ask why a 14-year-old orphan girl was wandering the city at night with an elderly stranger. Nobody would care that Mara had tried to do the right thing. People loved stories where kids like her were the problem. Evelyn looked down at Mara, and her expression softened in a way that didn't feel like pity. It felt like recognition. "What's your name?" she asked. "Mara," the orphan girl answered, voice small. Evelyn nodded slowly as if locking it away. "Mara," she repeated, "you brought me somewhere safe. You didn't have to. You did anyway." Then Evelyn turned back to the suited man and said, "Call off the police." The man's eyes widened. "Ma'am, we can't just—" "Call them off," Evelyn repeated, and her voice turned to steel. "Or I will explain to the mayor tomorrow morning why your standard procedure included treating my disappearance like a spectacle instead of a failure." The man swallowed, fingers going to his earpiece. Ms. Keene stared, stunned. Mara stood on the porch with her heart pounding, watching strangers in suits move around her life like they owned the street, like Maple House was just a stop on their route. And then the broader man stepped closer to Mara and asked low and direct, "Did you touch Mrs. Harrow's bag?" Mara's blood ran cold. "No," she said quickly. "She didn't have one." The man's eyes didn't soften. "Then why does the bus driver claim you were reaching into the fare box after you paid?" Mara's head snapped up. "What?" Ms. Keene's face drained of color. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Because somewhere out there, someone had already started rewriting the story, and Mara could feel the ground shifting under her feet. The next morning, the city felt like it had been scrubbed clean. The sky was bright and cold, the kind of blue that makes everything look sharper than it really is. Mara sat on the edge of her bed at Maple House, staring at her shoes. Ms. Keene had let her in, but not without consequences. She'd made Mara sign a late return form. She'd lectured her until Mara's ears rang. She'd said words like liability and incident report and endangering the facility. Evelyn Harrow hadn't stayed the night. Her security team had insisted on taking her home as soon as she'd used Maple House's landline to call someone. Before she left, she'd pressed a clean white card into Mara's hand. "If anyone gives you trouble," Evelyn had said, "you call this number." Mara had nodded, but her fingers had clenched around the card like it was fragile. She didn't believe people like Evelyn could fix people like Mara. Not really. Rich help always came with strings, with cameras, with speeches. It wasn't safe. Now Mara was dressed for school, her stomach hollow. A rumor had already reached Maple House through the staff's phones. Mara could hear it in the way Ms. Keene spoke to another supervisor in the hallway, voice tight. "Yes, a Harrow. Yes, that Harrow. No, we didn't invite her. We're handling it." At school, the handling turned into something uglier. When Mara stepped into the front office, the secretary's eyes widened like she'd spotted a stray animal. Two teachers paused mid-conversation and stared. A boy in a varsity jacket whispered something to his friend and they both laughed. Phones came out again, more openly this time. Mara kept walking, head down. "Quinn!" a voice called. Principal Dalloway stood near the hallway entrance, hands clasped behind his back. He had the posture of a man who liked rules, because rules liked him back. "My office," he said, not asking. Mara followed him, heart thudding. She tried to think of what she could say. The truth should have been enough. The truth had never been enough before. Inside the office, Principal Dalloway didn't offer her a seat. He slid a sheet of paper across his desk. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Mara glanced down. A complaint form. Bus authority, driver statement. Her eyes snagged on the line. Subject interfered with operations and appeared to tamper with farebox. Mara's throat tightened. "That's not true," she said. Principal Dalloway leaned forward. "The driver states you forced the doors, delayed the route and created a security concern involving a high-profile individual." "I paid," Mara blurted. "I paid for her because he wouldn't let her on. I didn't touch anything else." "And yet," Principal Dalloway said, tone flat, "your name is now being attached to a story that is spreading online, a story that paints this school, this district, as reckless for allowing an unsupervised student from a residential facility to involve herself in a public incident." Mara's cheeks burned. "I didn't involve myself," she said, and her voice cracked. "He did, when he tried to leave her out there." Principal Dalloway's eyes hardened. "Mara, you are not in a position to lecture adults on procedure." The words hit her like a slap, not because they were loud, but because they were familiar. Not in a position, not the right kind of kid, not someone whose voice counted. He continued, "Until this is resolved, you are suspended for 2 days, off campus, no extracurriculars, no scholarship interview." Mara's stomach dropped. "What scholarship interview?" she demanded, then remembered too late that he didn't know. His brows lifted. "So you had an interview?" Mara swallowed hard. "The art program downtown. The one chance that felt like a door cracking open. She had her portfolio in her backpack. She had stayed up late for weeks, sketching under the dim maple house lamp, drawing hands, faces, anything that looked like it belonged to someone. If she missed it, she might not get another. "It's today," she whispered. Principal Dalloway's expression didn't change. "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to play hero." Play hero. Like compassion was a game. Mara's hands curled into fists so tight her nails dug into her skin. "So what?" she said, voice shaking. "You want me to learn to look away?" Principal Dalloway's lips tightened. "I want you to learn your place." Mara stared at him, and something in her chest went cold and clear. She took the complaint form, not because she agreed, but because she wanted to see the lie with her own eyes. She walked out of the office and into a hallway full of whispers. "That's her," someone said. "That orphan girl. She kidnapped the billionaire," another voice laughed. "I heard she stole her bag," someone else added, like they were passing around candy. Mara's vision blurred, not with tears, but with heat. She shoved open the front doors and stepped into the cold sunlight, breathing hard. In her pocket, the white card from Evelyn Harrow felt like a weight. "Call this number." Mara pulled it out, stared at the clean black letters, and hesitated. Was she really going to ask a billionaire for help? Would that make her weak? Would that prove everyone right? That she couldn't handle her own life? Then her phone buzzed with a new message from Maple House. "Return immediately. Caseworker meeting." Mara's heart dropped again. Caseworker meeting meant consequences that followed you. It meant decisions made without you. She started walking fast, clutching her backpack, trying not to run. And as she turned the corner by the bus stop, she saw something on the ground near the bench. Something bright red tangled against the metal leg like it had been dropped in a hurry. A scarf. Mara stopped so abruptly, her breath caught. Because if the red scarf was here, then the man from the bus had been here too, and that meant last night wasn't over at all. Mara crouched and picked up the scarf with 2 fingers, like it might bite. The fabric was cheap, synthetic, frayed at one end. It smelled faintly of cigarettes and cold air. Her heart pounded as she looked around. The street was ordinary. Cars passing, a dog barking behind a fence, a delivery truck rattling over cracked pavement. Nothing screamed danger. That was the problem. Danger rarely screamed. She shoved the scarf into a plastic bag from her backpack and kept walking faster now. Maple House came into view like a checkpoint in a world that didn't trust her. Inside, the front office smelled like coffee and printer ink. Ms. Keene sat rigid behind the desk. Next to her was Mr. Halprin, Mara's caseworker, a man who always looked like he was running out of time and sympathy at the same moment. "Mara," Mr. Halprin said, voice tight. "Sit." Mara sat. Her knee bounced under the chair. "Ms." Keene slid a folder forward. "We've received calls," she said, "from the school, from the transit authority, from a reporter who somehow got our number." Mara's mouth went dry. "I didn't tell anyone," she said. Mr. Halprin rubbed his forehead. "It doesn't matter who told," he said. "It's out. And when things get out, they get twisted." Mara clenched her hands. "I didn't do anything wrong." Ms. Keene's eyes narrowed. "You broke curfew." Mara's jaw tightened. "I helped someone." Mr. Halprin held up a hand, trying to keep the room from catching fire. "We're not debating morality," he said. "We're debating outcomes." Outcomes. Another word adults used when they didn't want to say consequences. He continued, "There's also an allegation, unconfirmed, that you were involved in the disappearance of Mrs. Harrow's bag." Mara's chest tightened. "I didn't take her bag," she said, voice shaking. "She didn't even have it." "Then where is it?" Ms. Keene demanded. "I don't know," Mara snapped, and then hated herself for it. Snapping always made them see her as what they expected. Difficult, unstable, trouble. Mr. Halprin leaned forward. "Mara," he said quietly, "do you know who Evelyn Harrow is?" Mara swallowed. "A billionaire," she muttered, because the word tasted strange. "She's more than that," he said. "Her foundation funds programs all over this city, including—" His gaze flicked to Ms. Quinn. "Some of the grants that keep Maple House open." Ms. Quinn's face went hard, like she didn't want Mara to see fear there, but it was too late. Mara saw it. She saw the truth behind the rules. Maple House didn't just run on structure. It ran on money, money that could vanish. "And now," Ms. Quinn said, voice clipped, "we have a situation where the funder's name is attached to our facility in a way we didn't control." Mara's stomach twisted. "So you're mad at me because I didn't let her freeze?" she demanded. Ms. Quinn's eyes flashed. "I'm mad because you brought a high-profile crisis to our door, and now every child in this building may pay for it." Mara's throat burned. "That's not fair." "No," Mr. Halprin said softly. "It isn't, but it's real." A knock hit the office door. Ms. Quinn opened it, and a woman stepped in wearing a tailored coat and a calm expression that looked practiced. She held a tablet like it was part of her arm. "I'm sorry to interrupt," the woman said. "I'm Diane Klein. I represent Mrs. Harrow." Mara's heart hammered. Ms. Quinn went stiff. Mr. Halprin stood halfway, then sat again, unsure of the right posture. Diane's gaze landed on Mara. "You're Mara Quinn," she said. Mara didn't answer. She nodded once. Diane's expression softened by half a degree. "Mrs. Harrow wants to see you," she said. "Today." Ms. Quinn's voice snapped. "Absolutely not. She's a minor. She's in care. You can't just—" "We can," Diane replied calmly. "With proper consent. And Mrs. Harrow has already spoken to the director of your agency this morning." Mr. Halprin's face drained. "She called the director?" he echoed, like he couldn't imagine someone that powerful caring enough to do that. Diane nodded. "She did. She's not pleased with how this has unfolded." Mara's stomach turned. Not pleased could mean anything when it came from the rich. It could mean lawsuits. It could mean headlines. It could mean being used as a symbol instead of a person. Diane held out her tablet. "Before anything else," she said, "Mrs. Harrow asked me to ask you one question. Did you see anyone suspicious on the bus?" Mara's fingers tightened around her backpack strap. She thought of the scarf in her bag. She thought of the complaint form claiming she tampered with the fare box. She thought of the way the man's eyes had flashed when she grabbed him. "Yes," Mara said, voice steady now. "And I have something that might help." She pulled the plastic bag from her backpack and slid the red scarf onto the desk. Diane's eyes narrowed for the first time. Ms. Quinn inhaled sharply. Mr. Halprin's mouth fell open. Diane picked up the bag carefully and studied the scarf. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "By the bus stop," Mara said. "Just now, like he dropped it." Diane's gaze snapped to Mara's face. "You understand what this could mean," she said softly. Mara swallowed. "It means he's close." Diane nodded once, then tapped something on her tablet. Her calm expression didn't break, but her voice tightened. "We need security here," she said into her device. "Now." Mara's heart slammed again. Security here meant the story growing larger, louder, harder to escape. And then Diane looked at Mara and said, "Mrs. Harrow believes you weren't just helping her last night. She believes you were targeted too." Mara's stomach dropped because she hadn't considered that. She had only thought of Evelyn's missing bag. She hadn't thought about why someone would want the orphan girl blamed. The Harrow estate didn't feel real. Mara had seen mansions on TV, in movies where the rich lived behind gates and the poor existed only as background. But standing in front of the Harrow gates, watching them glide open without sound, she felt like she'd stepped into a different country. The car that brought her was clean and smelled like leather and peppermint. "Mr." Halprin sat beside her, tense, as if he was afraid to touch anything. Diane sat in front, calm as ever. Mara stared out the window at lawns cut so perfectly they looked painted, at trees wrapped in tiny lights, even though it wasn't a holiday, at a fountain that moved like it had its own heartbeat. "Why is she doing this?" Mara whispered, mostly to herself. Mr. Halprin glanced at her. "Some people," he said carefully, "have complicated reasons." Inside, Evelyn Harrow waited in a sunlit room with tall windows. She wasn't wearing the thin coat from the bus stop. Today, she wore a soft grey sweater and pearl earrings. She looked like herself again, like a woman who belonged to power. But when she saw Mara, her eyes softened, and Mara recognized the same fear from last night, the same raw vulnerability under the polish. "Mara," Evelyn said, standing. "Thank you for coming." Mara stopped a few feet away, unsure of the rules. Evelyn stepped closer anyway and took Mara's hands. Her fingers were warm now. "I heard what your school did," Evelyn said, and her voice sharpened. "Suspending you. Blocking your interview." Mara's throat tightened. "It's fine," she lied automatically. "It's not fine," Evelyn corrected, and the certainty in her voice made Mara's chest ache. "You did what many adults fail to do. You saw someone being treated cruelly and you acted." Mara swallowed. "I also broke curfew," she muttered, because she couldn't accept praise without paying for it. Evelyn's lips pressed together. "Tell me," she said gently, "what did you lose when you paid that fare?" Mara hesitated. That was the question nobody had asked. Not Tom, not Principal Dalloway, not Ms. Keene. Everyone had talked about the spectacle, the rule, the outcome. Nobody had asked what it cost. "My bus money," Mara admitted. "And my interview. Maybe." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "And you still did it," she said almost to herself. Diane stepped in quietly. "Mrs. Harrow," she said, "we should discuss the missing bag." Evelyn nodded, then looked back at Mara. "You said there was a man," she said, "a red scarf." Mara nodded. "He tried to reach into your pocket. I grabbed him. He got off." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "And my bag disappeared at the garden," she murmured. "Not on the bus." Diane tapped her tablet. "We pulled security footage from the garden entrance," she said. "We have a suspect. We also have footage from the bus interior cameras." Mara's stomach clenched. Cameras, her face on tape. Proof could save her or trap her. Evelyn gestured to a chair, and Mara sat, hands in her lap. Mr. Halprin sat nearby, stiff as a statue. Diane turned the tablet toward them. A grainy video played. The bus aisle, Mara stepping forward, Mara dropping money into the fare box, Mara guiding Evelyn to a seat. The man with the red scarf standing too close, Mara grabbing his wrist. Mara's chest tightened as she watched herself from the outside. She looked small. She looked tired. She looked like a kid trying to hold back a wave. Then the video skipped to another angle near the front. Tom's hands moved near the fare box lever. His eyes flicked to the mirror. For a second, when Mara turned to help Evelyn sit, Tom's arm shifted in a way that made Mara's stomach turn. "What did he do?" Mara whispered. Diane paused the video and zoomed in. "We're not sure yet," she said carefully, "but it appears the driver opened the fare box compartment after you paid." Mara's blood went cold. "Why would he?" Evelyn's eyes hardened. "Because someone wanted a story," she said. "Someone wanted a child blamed. Someone wanted to make this look like theft." Mr. Halprin's voice came out rough. "Are you saying the driver—" "I'm saying," Evelyn cut in, "that my missing bag and your accusation happened within the same hour. That is not coincidence." Mara's hands shook. "So what now?" she asked, and the question felt too big for her mouth. Evelyn leaned forward, eyes locked on Mara. "Now we tell the truth," she said, "but we do it carefully. Because when you tell the truth in public, it becomes a weapon in someone else's hands if you don't control it." Mara stared at her. "I don't want to be on the news," she said quickly. "I don't want people to know where I live." Evelyn nodded once. "Then we protect you," she said, like it was simple. "And we protect Maple House." Mara flinched at the name. Evelyn noticed. "They're scared," Mara admitted. "They think you'll pull funding." Evelyn's expression didn't soften. "If Maple House's survival depends on rules that punish children for compassion," she said, "then Maple House needs more than funding. It needs accountability." Mara's throat tightened. That sounded like change, and change was dangerous. Change meant adults rearranging your life like furniture. Diane tapped her tablet again. "There's one more thing," she said quietly. "We found a second clip. The suspect from the garden, red scarf, he hands something to someone near the depot." Mara's heart hammered. "Who?" she asked. Diane inhaled, then turned the screen. The image was blurred, but the profile was familiar. A thick neck. A cap, a badge. A man standing beside a bus with his hand out, Tom. Mara's stomach dropped so hard she felt dizzy. Because if the driver was involved, then the person who humiliated Evelyn wasn't just cruel. He was dangerous, and he already knew Mara's face. By the time Mara returned to Maple House that evening, the air inside felt different. Not calmer, sharper. like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break. Ms. Keene avoided her eyes. Mr. Halprin spoke in low tones with another staff member. Kids in the common room looked up when Mara passed, whispering questions they didn't know how to ask. Mara went to her room and sat on her bed, staring at the white card Evelyn had given her. She didn't know if she trusted it. She didn't know if she trusted Evelyn. But she knew she trusted the footage. The footage didn't care who you were. It just showed what happened. Still, even proof didn't erase fear. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Tom's voice in her head, no fare, no ride, like it was stitched into her ears. She kept thinking of his hand near the fare box. She kept thinking of the red scarf. Around midnight, footsteps creaked outside her door. Mara froze. Maple House had night rounds, but the hallway sounded heavier than Ms. Keene's soft steps. She sat up, heart pounding. A shadow passed under her door, then stopped. A knock, low and cautious. "Mara?" A whisper. It was Jessa, the girl in the room across the hall. Jessa was 15, loud when she wasn't scared, always chewing gum, always acting like nothing got to her. But tonight her voice trembled. Mara opened the door a crack. "What?" Jessa's eyes were wide. "There's a man outside," she whispered. "By the fence. He's asking for you." Mara's blood turned to ice. "Asking for me?" she echoed. Jessa nodded fast. "He told Miss Keene he's from the bus company. He said there was paperwork you need to sign." Ms. Keene told him to leave. He didn't. Mara's mouth went dry. Paperwork. That sounded like a trick. That sounded like a way to get her outside where nobody could witness what happened next. Mara grabbed her phone with shaking hands. She didn't have many numbers saved. A pizza place, Mr. Halprin, Maple House front desk, and Evelyn's card. "Call this number if anyone gives you trouble." Mara stared at it. Her thumb hovered. In the hallway, Ms. Keene's voice rose, tight with panic. "You are not allowed back here," she snapped. "This is a facility for minors. Leave now or I call the police." A man's voice answered, rough and irritated. "I'm just doing my job. Kid needs to sign. You hiding her or what?" Mara's stomach twisted. That sounded like Tom. She dialed the number on Evelyn's card. It rang once, twice. A voice picked up, calm but alert. "Harrow Security," a man said. Mara's throat tightened. "This is Mara Quinn," she whispered. "There's a bus driver outside Maple House. He's asking for me." The pause was brief, but it felt like an entire breath. "Stay inside," the man said, voice suddenly sharp. "Lock your door. Do not go near any windows. Help is on the way." Mara's heart slammed. "Is he—" she started. "Stay inside," the voice repeated. "Right now." Mara shut the door and locked it, hands trembling. She pressed her back against the wood, listening. Voices rose outside. Ms. Keene's tone turned higher, more frightened. Then came the sound of metal rattling. The gate. Something scraped, like someone tugging at the chain link. Mara's breath caught. She pictured Tom at the fence, hands strong, face angry, eyes scanning for her. She pictured the red scarf. She pictured his hand taking Evelyn's bag and turning it into a lie. She clenched her jaw so hard it hurt. She wasn't going to be pulled out like a mistake. She heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. Not police, not exactly. Different. Private. The kind of sirens that belonged to people who could buy urgency. Outside, a car door slammed. Another voice shouted, "Step back from the gate." Mara held her breath. Then silence. Heavy, sudden, like the whole yard had been snapped into stillness. Her phone buzzed. A text from the same security number. "We have him, you're safe." Mara's knees went weak, and she slid down the door, trembling. But even as relief washed through her, another thought surfaced, cold and sharp. If Tom came here looking for her, it meant he wasn't just trying to protect himself. He was trying to erase the one person who could tell the truth. The next day moved like a storm building. Evelyn Harrow didn't waste time. Mara was brought to a meeting downtown in a conference room that smelled like polished wood and expensive coffee. Mr. Halprin sat beside her, still tense, but his eyes had changed. He looked less like a man drowning and more like a man watching a lifeboat approach. Diane Klein stood at the front with her tablet, showing stills from the footage. A city official sat across the table, face stiff. A transit authority representative kept rubbing his hands as if he could wipe guilt off his skin. Mara sat quietly, listening as adults spoke in circles. Procedure, liability, public perception. Every word felt like it had been sanded down until it didn't hurt anyone important. Evelyn finally walked in, and the room changed instantly. Chairs straightened, voices quieted. People smiled the way they do when they want something. Evelyn didn't smile back. "Let's be clear," she said, sitting at the head of the table. "This is not about my inconvenience. This is about a child being scapegoated for an employee's misconduct." The transit representative swallowed. "Mrs. Harrow, we take allegations seriously." "Then take the evidence seriously," Evelyn cut in. Diane tapped her tablet and played the footage of Tom at the depot, hand out, receiving something from the red scarf man. Then she played the clip of Tom opening the fare box compartment after Mara paid. Then, finally, she played a clip from the night at Maple House, Tom at the fence insisting Mara come outside. The city official's face drained. "He went to a residential facility," he whispered. Mara's chest tightened. "He said it was paperwork," she said quietly. "But he didn't have any." Evelyn leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Mara," she said gently, "tell them what happened on the bus. In your own words." Mara's mouth went dry. Speaking in front of adults like this felt like stepping onto thin ice, but she nodded. She told them about the old lady on the curb, about Tom's cruelty, about paying with her last $5, about the man with the red scarf. When she finished, the room was silent for a beat. The transit representative cleared his throat. We were informed the student may have tampered with..." Evelyn's hand lifted, stopping him mid-sentence. "You were informed by Tom," she said, tone flat. "A man who now has documented contact with the person who stole my bag." The representative's voice broke. "We've terminated his contract pending investigation," he said quickly. "Good," Evelyn said. "Now undo the harm." Mara's heart pounded. Undo the harm meant clearing her name. It meant her suspension, her interview. Diane slid a paper across the table. "We'd like the district to reverse the suspension immediately," she said, "and we'd like a formal statement clearing Mara Quinn of wrongdoing." Principal Dalloway wasn't in the room. That was intentional. Evelyn didn't negotiate with men who told children to learn their place. The city official nodded slowly. "We can issue a statement," she said, "but it's already online. People have opinions." Evelyn's gaze turned cold. "Then use your platform to correct them," she said. "If you can amplify a lie, you can amplify the truth." Mr. Halprin shifted, finally speaking. "There's another issue," he said quietly. "Maple House is terrified. They think this will cost them funding. They think..." He hesitated, glancing at Evelyn. "They think you'll punish them." Evelyn's face didn't soften, but her voice lowered. "I'm not interested in punishing children," she said. "But I am interested in ensuring they are safe." Mara swallowed. "Ms. Keene isn't evil," she blurted, surprising herself. Everyone turned to her. She hated attention, but she pushed through. "She's scared all the time," Mara said. "About money, about inspections, about losing the building, about us getting hurt. She thinks rules stop everything." Evelyn studied her. "And do they?" she asked softly. Mara's voice came out small. "No," she admitted. "They just stop us." Evelyn nodded slowly as if she'd been waiting for that answer. "Then we change the rules," she said. Diane's eyes flicked up. "Mrs. Harrow," she cautioned, "publicly associating with Maple House could draw media." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "So be it," she said. "If media comes, they will see what it looks like when a city asks children to survive on scraps." Mara's stomach twisted. Media meant faces, names. Maple House kids didn't need that. Evelyn turned to Mara. "I will not expose you," she said, as if reading her fear. "We will do this without putting a camera in your face. But I do need one thing from you." Mara's throat tightened. "What?" Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "Will you stand in a room with your principal and tell the truth," she asked, "even if your voice shakes?" Mara felt the old fear rise. Principal Dalloway's office, the complaint form, the words "learn your place." But she also felt something else now. She felt the red scarf in her hand. She felt the footage. She felt the memory of Evelyn's trembling hands on the bus rail. Mara nodded once. "Yes," she said. Evelyn's eyes softened and she leaned back. "Then we do this tomorrow," she said. Mara's heart slammed again, because tomorrow meant walking back into the place that tried to silence her, only this time she wouldn't be walking in alone. The school auditorium smelled like floor wax and old curtains. It was the kind of space where assemblies happened, where adults stood on stage and told kids what mattered. Mara sat in the front row with Mr. Halprin beside her, hands folded, trying to keep her knee from bouncing. Behind them, a few staff members murmured. Principal Dalloway stood near the stage, posture stiff. He looked angry, not because he believed Mara was guilty, but because he'd been forced into a situation he couldn't control. The district superintendent stepped to the microphone. "We are here," she said, voice smooth, "to clarify misinformation regarding a recent incident involving one of our students." Mara's stomach churned. She could feel eyes on her. She could hear whispers. "That's her, that orphan girl." Then the side door opened and Evelyn Harrow walked in. The room froze. It wasn't dramatic applause. It wasn't gasps like in movies. It was quieter than that, more unsettling. Teachers stiffened. Students stopped breathing. Phones rose, then lowered, like people weren't sure if it was allowed. Evelyn walked down the aisle without looking left or right. Diane Klein followed. Two security men stayed near the door, watching with stillness that felt like a warning. Evelyn reached the front row and stopped beside Mara. She looked down at her and nodded once, like a promise. Principal Dalloway's face tightened. The superintendent cleared her throat. "Mrs. Harrow," she said, suddenly nervous, "thank you for coming." Evelyn didn't smile. "I came because a child was punished for compassion," she said, and her voice carried without a microphone. "And because lies spread faster than truth when truth belongs to people no one listens to." Mara's throat tightened. The word child landed differently when Evelyn said it, like it included protection instead of condescension. Diane stepped forward and handed the superintendent a folder. "The district has reviewed the footage," Diane said, calm. "They will now issue a correction." The superintendent swallowed, then read from a paper. "Mara Quinn has been cleared of all allegations of tampering with transit property," she said. "Her suspension has been rescinded. We apologize for any harm caused." Mara's chest tightened. Apology didn't erase the hallway whispers, but it loosened something around her ribs. Principal Dalloway stepped forward, jaw clenched. "Mara," he said, voice stiff, "the school regrets—" Evelyn lifted a hand, stopping him. "Regret is not accountability," she said. "You told her to learn her place." The auditorium went silent. Mara's cheeks burned. She hadn't told anyone those words. She hadn't dared. How did Evelyn know? Evelyn's gaze didn't leave Principal Dalloway. "You used your authority to shame a child into silence," she continued, "and you did it because it was easy." Principal Dalloway's face flushed. "I was managing a situation," he snapped. "You were managing your reputation," Evelyn corrected. "This is the situation." She gestured toward Mara. "A 14-year-old orphan girl had $5. She used it to keep an elderly woman from being abandoned in the cold, while adults watched and did nothing." Mara's throat tightened. Hearing her described that way, 14-year-old orphan girl, made her feel exposed and seen at the same time. The superintendent tried to regain control. "We understand the importance of—" Evelyn cut her off gently, and somehow it was worse because it was gentle. "Do you know what she missed because of your suspension?" Evelyn asked. The superintendent hesitated. "I'm not sure." "An interview," Evelyn said. "A program that could have changed her future, which is exactly what punishment does to children in care. It doesn't teach lessons, it shuts doors." Mara swallowed hard. She stared at her hands. Evelyn turned slightly, addressing the room. "The Harrow Foundation will fund Maple House for the next 5 years," she said, and a wave of murmurs rose. Ms. Keene, sitting near the back, stiffened like she'd been punched. "Not as charity," Evelyn continued, "but as responsibility. Because I will not live in a city where children carry adult burdens alone." The superintendent's eyes widened. "Mrs. Harrow, and," Evelyn added, voice steady, "we will create a scholarship for students in care, not for perfect grades, not for good behavior, for courage, for persistence, for showing up." Mara's breath caught. She didn't know if she should feel hope or fear. Hope always came with a cost. Evelyn looked down at Mara. "Mara," she said softly, Tell them what you saw on the bus." Mara's heart slammed. She stood, legs trembling. The microphone was on the stage, too far. But Evelyn didn't hand her a mic. Evelyn didn't make her perform. Evelyn just looked at her like her words mattered. Mara swallowed and spoke, voice shaking at first, then steadier. She told the auditorium about the old lady being refused, about paying, about the red scarf, about the attempt to steal, about the fear. When Mara finished, a strange silence followed. It wasn't the silence of dismissal. It was the silence of people realizing they'd been witnesses. Evelyn nodded once, then turned to the superintendent. "Now," she said, "do you still want to call this a student incident?" The superintendent's lips parted. No words came out, because the truth, spoken out loud in a room full of people, had shifted the power in a way nobody could unsee. And Mara, standing there with her hands shaking, realized her story wasn't being rewritten anymore. It was finally being heard. Months later, the bus still ran the same route, rattling over potholes, wheezing at stops, carrying tired people home. The city didn't transform overnight, it never did, but some things changed in ways you could touch. Maple House got new locks, new heaters. The broken porch light was replaced with one that actually worked, bright and steady. The hallway smelled less like bleach and more like fresh paint. A counselor was hired who didn't treat kids like paperwork. Ms. Keene still kept her clipboard, but her eyes didn't look as panicked. When rules were enforced, someone explained why. When a kid was late, someone asked what happened before they punished them. Mara didn't become a different person. She still flinched when adults raised their voices. She still hated being watched. She still carried her backpack like it held her whole life, but she walked through school halls without whispers, following her like shadows. People still looked sometimes, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't cruel. Some kids even nodded at her like she was real. The art program rescheduled her interview. Mara went with Mr. Halprin, hands shaking, portfolio held tight. She didn't win a miracle on the spot. She didn't walk out with confetti, but she earned a spot and then another, because her drawings weren't just skill. They were story. They were survival on paper. Evelyn Harrow didn't become Mara's savior. That mattered. Evelyn didn't adopt her, didn't sweep her into a mansion, didn't turn her into a fairy tale. Instead, Evelyn did something rarer. She stayed involved without owning Mara's life. She showed up at Maple House once a month, not with cameras, but with questions. How are the kids? What do you need? Who is being overlooked? One afternoon, Mara found herself at the same bus stop where she'd picked up the red scarf. The bench had been replaced. The street light didn't flicker anymore. A small sign had been mounted near the post with a phone number for help, for safety, for people who got lost. Mara stood there holding a paper cup of hot chocolate from the diner, steam curling up into the cold air. Evelyn arrived with Diane, but Evelyn waved Diane back and walked to the bench alone. She sat carefully, smoothing her coat. Mara stayed standing for a moment, then sat too, leaving space between them like she always did, even with people she trusted a little. Evelyn looked out at the street. "I hate that bus," she said suddenly. Mara huffed a small laugh. "Me too." Evelyn's gaze drifted to Mara's hands. Mara had been turning something between her fingers without realizing it. A coin. Not a quarter exactly. Not a token. Just a simple silver coin she'd found in her pocket that morning. Evelyn's eyes softened. "Is that your reminder?" she asked. Mara glanced down, then nodded. "Yeah," she admitted. "So I don't forget." "Forget what?" Evelyn asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. Mara swallowed. "That I can do one thing," she said quietly, "even if it costs me." Evelyn nodded slowly. "And," she added, "that it can cost you less if the world does its job." Mara stared ahead. Cars passed. A tired woman stepped up to the curb, digging in her bag for change. A man in a work uniform checked the schedule. Ordinary life moved around them. Mara hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in her chest for months. "Why did you walk alone that night?" she asked. "Why did you leave your security?" Evelyn's mouth tightened, and for the first time she looked older than her money. "Because I wanted to prove to myself I still could," she said quietly. "I grew up with nothing, Mara. People forget that about me. They see the towers and the board meetings and they think I was born in a house with gates. I wasn't." She paused. "But I forgot something else. I forgot what the world does when it thinks you're alone. Mara's throat tightened. It looks away, she said. Evelyn nodded. It looks away, she repeated. Then she looked at Mara. Except you. Mara felt heat rise behind her eyes and blinked it away, annoyed at herself. She didn't want to cry at a bus stop. Not again. Evelyn reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small object. A bus pass, laminated, clipped to a simple keychain. For Maple House, she said. Unlimited. For any kid who needs it. Mara stared. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't a check with too many zeros. It was something practical, something that meant no kid had to choose between home and hunger. Mara nodded slowly. Thank you, she said, and this time it didn't feel like surrender. The bus rumbled around the corner, brakes squealing. Mara watched it approach, watched the doors hiss open. For a second her body tensed, expecting Tom's face, expecting cruelty. But a different driver sat there now, older, eyes tired, but not sharp. He nodded once at the riders like they mattered. Mara stood, coin still in her fingers, and stepped toward the door. Evelyn rose too. Will you still help people? She asked softly. After everything it caused? Mara paused, then looked back. Yeah, she said. But next time, I'm also going to help myself. Evelyn's smile was small, real. Good, she said. That's the lesson adults should have taught you. Mara stepped onto the bus, dropped her pass against the scanner, and heard the small approving beep. It sounded like permission. It sounded like a door opening. As the bus pulled away, Mara held the coin in her palm and felt how light it was. And she thought about how a small thing could still change the direction of a night, a life, a city, if someone refused to look away. If you've ever had a moment where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right, I'd like to hear what you chose and why.